Welcome to the Somewhat Frank podcast, hosted by entrepreneur, author, and investor Frank Gruber, and joined by entrepreneur, lawyer, and investor Jen Consalvo. After each having successful startup exits, these two college friends cover a wide array of the latest trends and topics in tech, startups, investing, entertainment, and life. You'll notice they like to live life to the fullest with lots of adventure and believe in celebrating those important wins along the way. The podcast is produced with the help of Established, a strategic consultancy focused on corporate innovation, entrepreneurs, and the ecosystems that support and elevate them. Now it's time to be somewhat frank. Let's get to it.
Welcome back to the Somewhat Frank podcast. I'm your host, Frank Gruber. I'm joined by my friend, colleague, and adventurer, Johnny Guidos. Thanks for joining us today, Johnny.
Right-hand man. You forgot that, Frank.
I forgot, yeah. I'm a little rusty today, and I'll tell you why in a minute.
Well, I'm doing well, thanks. I hope y'all are having a great day so far as well.
Yeah, definitely. And also joining us, again, as our special guest, Jen Consalvo. She can solve all your problems. She's from Established. Welcome back, Jen.
Happy to be here.
All right. Just before we get in there and get going, I wanted to inform everyone, it's kind of a public service announcement for Somewhat Frank, that after 2 years and almost 5 months, I am no longer a COVID virgin. Both Jen and I caught COVID last week, right after our week-long marathon of America's Seed Fund Week, which we told you about in the last podcast, which went great. It went great, but then somehow, somewhere, I don't know how, because we were literally inside for a week, but we somehow caught COVID, and it's have been slowly recovering since. So you kind of hear it a little bit in our throat, a little raspy still, but really did knock us out.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. But I like the way that you announced that to the world, that you're no longer a COVID virgin. So
not at all what I would have selected.
Yeah, I know. But how was that for both of you? Just curious.
So let's see. So I'm the one who first had signs. So we had just gone on a weekend trip. We came back. I thought I was just having an allergy attack. Like literally, I was like, this is making me crazy. It's like allergies all the time. And then the next morning, when I woke up, I felt really off, like not like the typical allergy type feelings of tiredness. So I took a test. And that line switched so fast. Like I've never seen it. It was so dark and so fast. But the little swab thing looked funny. So we were like, maybe this is a faulty test. So I did another one and the exact same thing happened. So we knew right away, like, I'm positive. And but Frank was feeling fine. So Frank, what'd you do?
Yeah, I went into a mild panic immediately. And because we've shared space for 24/7 for several days, and I had just taken a weekend trip, and we were in the car for a long time. So anyway, long story short, I decided to take a test as well. Came back negative. Phew! Don't have COVID, supposedly, and went on to continue to go about my day or whatever, and for a couple days, and ultimately
masking. So keep in mind, we're a household, so we're all masked, and he moves out of the office, so I'm in one room, he's in another. We're trying to like segment the house and like go into different rooms at different times, and so we're really making an effort at that.
Yeah, it definitely got a little awkward. Wearing masks inside for all that amount of time, and obviously I think I even slept with one day, which is kind of weird. I don't think you're supposed to do that, actually. It's bad for breathing. But either way, I finally decided, okay, we got to take a PCR test. So we all take PCR tests, local pharmacy, and wait a day or whatever. And funny enough, pretty much timed exactly with when I get the results back from that. I hit a wall, and literally all of a sudden, all the symptoms came, and I was, inside my head, behind my eyes, was super heavy, like there was something back there, and it just kept getting heavier and heavier. And anyway, long story short, I came back positive as well, and here we are 8 or 9 days later, and I'm finally starting to feel back to normal-ish. Still not 100%, but getting there.
Wow, that sounds pretty rough for both of you. I'm very sorry to hear that, but glad you're feeling better, and hopefully, you have your antibodies up now and can go for a little while without getting it again. But sorry to hear y'all went through that.
Yeah, I think we lucked out though. As much as it stinks, especially in the best part of summer. Um, we've had friends who have been, who've gotten the other versions of COVID where they've got stomach issues or GI issues or, just have horrible, horrible coughs, and we've really escaped the worst of it. So I think, part of that is being vaccinated. Part of it, I think, is also the luck of the draw in terms of probably what variant we ended up getting. So I think we can count our lucky stars.
Yeah, and I have to say, knock on wood, our little one never did get COVID, so that's interesting. And she's been exposed to us for days and weeks, and is vaccinated and all that. But I think I think they've been microdosing those little kids, being around all the other little kids forever, for months and months in school. That at the end of the day, maybe they're better to fight it off better. I don't know. It's interesting.
Could be. Yeah, it is interesting, but glad, knock on wood, she's hanging in there.
Yeah. Okay. So enough about COVID. I'm sure people have heard enough about COVID already. So we're going to jump right into something unrelated to COVID, but kind of related to today, because actually it's pickleball. Pickleball has been making its way across the country for the last couple of years, actually, and it's become a big thing. And actually, Jen and I have been doing pickleball as well, and we have it on Thursdays, and just happen to have some pickleball tonight. So, as well as other days. So long story short, there's an article I want to share here called Can Pickleball Save America? And it's about how pickleball is bringing people together, which is really interesting because there's tournaments everywhere, all around the coast, all around the country. And people are doing it in their front lawns and or front yards and their driveways and all that. So, I don't know if it can actually save America, but it's definitely a hot sport. And we were, like I mentioned, playing a few times a day. Anybody else jumping into pickleball? Of Johnny, you tried it yet?
Yeah, we played pickleball. It was pretty popular when I was in high school. I remember when we were playing it before football practice back,
early adopter. Wow.
The 90s.
Started the revolution.
I know. So I know it's picking up steam these days. I even saw our fellow Boilermaker Drew Brees is investing in some sort of pickleball league as well, or something like that. But yeah, it's not new to me. I mean, I've known it for 25 odd years, something like that. So it's cool that it's picking up steam now. It's a really fun sport. But I don't know. I guess it's not new to me.
That's so cool to hear because I had never heard of it before and I thought it was new. But I guess it's kind of like, a few years ago when bocce got so popular, right? And like there are bocce leagues everywhere. I know in Washington, D.C., it became this huge thing and restaurants were building in bocce sections of the restaurant and there were leagues all over. So, I think it's just waves and people get excited when something new comes around that all of a sudden that you can play with other people and it becomes like a social thing. So I'm kind of excited by that.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's a good analogy with bocce, and that actually reminds me. I love bocce, and I also love that game we play on the beach. John got it actually for us. It's that moki, I think, or moke. I can't remember how you say it, but it's basically like Finnish bowling, I think or Swedish bowling. Can't remember. But
that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's kind of a fun game with little pegs and all that. But one downside, I guess, that's happening with pickleball is that while it is a big thing, some people aren't so happy about its explosion because I don't know if you have really had this happen or thought about it, but with like tennis and some of these other things, you don't hear the ball get hit every single time. And with pickleball, it's a solid ball and a solid racket. And so you literally hear the sound of the pickleball every single time. And I guess people are getting upset if you're building pickleball in, where tennis courts used to be, neighborhoods and things like that. It's loud. If you get a lot of people together, all you hear is that sound. So I guess it created a new problem with its popularity.
It is pretty interesting to think about. It is loud now that I think about it. I don't think it's going to slow down the growth by any means. People always look for some reason to complain, I feel like, but it is, now that I think about it, it is pretty darn loud. Maybe if you had like 10 games going on at the same time, it'd be pretty annoying, but
yeah, definitely. And so that's been one concern, but like I said, I don't think it's, or you said it, I don't think it's going to slow it down too much. And I think it's going to continue to go around because it's a good exercise and people getting out there and getting together. Maybe we'll save America. Hopefully it does some positive things out there in the world. So aside from the noise violations. All right, so let's jump into work, future of work. I don't know if you saw recently, but Andreessen Horowitz, a big venture capitalist firm, basically decided they're based out in Silicon Valley, but they decided to move their headquarters and actually get rid of their headquarters, and more or less are creating they're making the headquarters in the cloud, and so they're creating physical offices that are going to be globally, including new spaces in Miami Beach, New York, Santa Monica. They're going to keep their Silicon Valley headquarters. And the reason I'm talking about it is because they're a trendsetter. They've invested in a lot of different companies, several you know. And so obviously that'll trickle down to the companies that are continuing to become, large unicorns or, even just public companies. And so I think it's an interesting trend as we see people going back to work. And my thought on it is, I think that's, headquarters is wherever you are, right? That's the trend. And I don't know if that's going to change or change anytime soon. So love to get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen for years now, there have been startups, right? Who, when you're 1, 2, or 3 people and you don't have an office, where is your headquarters? And at the end of the day, you have to pick something for tax reasons, right? So they're probably, going with whatever is most advantageous for their company in terms of what they can, put on their taxes. But overall, yeah, I mean, the idea that you have to have this one physical location as a headquarters, I think will make less and less sense for a lot of different people. Now, how that plays out, again, like to be most advantageous for individual companies versus the government and taxes and all that, I think we'll see where that goes.
That's an interesting point, Jen. Usually when you incorporate a company, you have your state of incorporation, then you have your principal place of business, which both have tax implications, right? So I think that may be something that we all need to revisit in the future. And when I say we, I mean the government. But additionally, I feel pretty strongly about this next point, and we may need to dedicate an entire podcast to it at some point. But I don't know about how you all feel, but I think that there needs to be a refresher course on like virtual meeting etiquette. And I'm not perfect by any means. I have my own moments, but I mean, I've been on calls and people are eating on these calls and look like they just rolled out of bed and maybe aren't being as professional as we were at the beginning of the pandemic when everybody first went virtual. So I don't know how you all feel about that, and I've even caught myself, turning off my camera on certain meetings and stuff like that. So I think it's great if there is a savings to be made that you don't need office space anymore, as long as the productivity keeps up. But I do think that we all need to maybe revisit some virtual meeting etiquette, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. And I think that it's not necessarily that it's gone. I think there's also the office. I'm saying there's still they're making pop-ups, right? Andreessen Horowitz is, so they're making these other locations. So there's still going to be those places. And I think what I think I read from this is it downplaying the importance of Silicon Valley, right? There's now these other places that are also as important, like Miami and they've got LA, basically Santa Monica, New York, as other places that they see as interesting places for what they're looking for and where they want to be. And so while they will be in the cloud some of the time, maybe they'll also be popping into these locations. So I think it's interesting concept for other organizations to potentially follow as they think about, okay, we're going to have our headquarters everywhere and we're just going to jump from place to place in these 2 or 3 different locations. So interesting trend there for sure. And that led me to this other article that I was going to bring up here, is that Costa Rica, which I love, just made it ridiculously easy to live there as a digital nomad. And I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's a beautiful place, and they're doing some things with a visa to make it easy for nomads to be there. So I think if you're not in one of those other locations, maybe you could take a look at Costa Rica as well.
I absolutely love this. Maybe it's because I love Costa Rica so much. I've been there a handful of times, and I'm a huge fan, and have always, we started off when we were first starting our companies, we looked at ourselves as digital nomads. We were on the road more than we were in any one location. And especially when you're that sort of small, nimble startup, or if you're sort of, again, like have the opportunity to work solo, or you work with a company, but you're on your own and you can be anywhere. It's wonderful to have that kind of flexibility. It is very interesting, though, that they have minimum income levels. So to be eligible for this visa, you have to make at least $3,000 a month if you're a solo traveler, or $5,000 if you're with your family, because I think what they don't want is to just have a bunch of people come and sort of be living off the resources in Costa Rica and not be bringing with them some of the dollars to help support the economy. So it'll be interesting to see if other countries follow suit.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, the requirements there are unique, right? It's not just come and do whatever you want. You've got to have some business to be there, right? You can't just go and hang. All right. So speaking of hanging and with people, let's move on to some society kind of things related to society. We've got this new article that came out in New York Times. It basically says check-ins with texting your friends basically matters, more or less. New research shows that it's super underestimated the power of your casual check-in. So basically text your friends, it matters. And I think some people hold back because they don't want to bother people or whatever, and there's research that shows that it can impact people's lives, change their mindset, maybe make them think of other things, which is positive, especially when we've been kind of living or had been living kind of in silos for a couple of years there. So I think it's important to think about, and want to make sure we brought it to light today.
Definitely. I really enjoy it when people, sounds kind of obvious, right? But I enjoy it when people text me, and we've been living since the pandemic, and I know that there's statistics that also support that, there's been an increase in issues with mental health and suicide and those sorts of things. So I think checking in on people and getting a little friendly text every once in a while definitely brightens my day, and I can imagine it does so for others as well.
Absolutely. I'm someone that likes to do that as well. So obviously on the same page there. You brought up mental health, and another thing that came out recently, which I think is super important, and I don't know why they didn't think of it sooner, is a suicide prevention hotline that's similar to 911, but it's 988. So if you just dial 988, you can talk to somebody when you're having not such great thoughts or having a rough day there, and more or less hopefully it helps people that are doing some things that may be harmful to themselves or others. So I think everyone needs to know that, help spread that word, because I think it should be as popular as 911. I don't know, Jen, what do you think, or John?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, reminder, the numbers, not the service is not new. This has been around for many years, and it's used. I forgot the numbers I heard the other day, but I mean, they support millions of calls, right? The thing that they just added to this is a more easy, memorable number. And so that's really important, I think, for everyone to start socializing, so that literally as you grow up, just like 911 in emergency, 988, because I don't know about you, but throughout the course of my lifetime, there have been people in situations where that number would have been very helpful to know, to help people in my own life. And, we certainly back in the day didn't know off the top of our head that suicide prevention hotline, right? That wasn't something that we grew up knowing necessarily. And this could be a real huge benefit for all of society. So I was really happy to hear this news.
Yeah, I don't think you can really take either side on this, right? I mean, I think it's important, and something ease of access is huge. So this I love to see this kind of stuff. I think it's hugely important, and like Frank said, why didn't we think of this earlier, right?
It was such a long number. Like, who's going to remember that in a situation like that? So 988, there it is. Remember it. Commit it to memory. If you have somebody, if you're in need and are in that situation, there you go. There's somebody to help there. All right, so moving along here, we've got we're going to talk about space and some innovation and then wrap here. So we've got some interesting things happening out in space. Scientists picked up a radio signal, heartbeat, billions of light years away. What are they listening to, I wonder, on that radio station? I have no idea. Oh, that's not what. No, sorry, I misread that. Wonder what that is. I mean, it's crazy. This was in NPR. It's not like some random like tabloid. This is like a real deal. So love to get your thoughts on what do you think?
I just don't know. I mean, obviously it's significant enough that the scientists are, getting it in the news, so it means something. I just don't understand what the implications are, right? Like, it could be is it just a dying star out there? It seems to me that we're thinking that it may be a conscious effort from elsewhere in the galaxy or the solar system. So that's pretty interesting stuff. I don't think that anybody really knows what it means quite yet. It's quite a mystery.
Yeah, the fact that this is, first of all, it's MIT, right? So this is astronomers at MIT who have picked up this signal. Yeah, it's a good question. Was it a slow news day and they're just trying to build build on the sort of intriguing story here that people, like you said, John, people automatically start thinking like, oh my gosh, there's life and they're trying to connect and they're sending out this signal, or is this literally just one of those many mysteries of the universe that have yet to be solved, that we're all learning about on a regular basis, right? Especially now that the James Webb Telescope is out there and we're seeing all these images for the first time, and seeing these bursts of signal. It all just sort of feeds into our collective excitement about the universe and what's out there.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of going to see what's out there, scientists also have discovered that space travel does accelerate aging. And if anybody's seen the Buzz Lightyear movie recently, not to be a spoiler here for anyone, you cover your ears if you haven't, that's kind of what it's about. So, but in a weird way, right? So I guess space is not good for your age, but they did it kind of the reverse. But either way, we are sending more people up to space, and as people are going to start doing more space travel, and we're talking about going to Mars and going to Moon and all these different things, it may not be so good for you. Our bodies maybe aren't made for it. So maybe there needs to be more done to kind of figure out how to kind of combat that if they want to continue those efforts. Because I think, if you get up there and you are, starting to feel real old or starting to age quicker or something, that's not necessarily a good thing.
Yeah, it's I think one of the things that could come out of this is, as they do all this research about aging, simultaneously they're doing all kinds of research on what can combat that aging, right? So it's not just for space, because who on Earth doesn't want to slow down their aging? So it'll be interesting to see as they get to do this research with literally these human experiments, as people go to space and they can do these studies. And then they work on actual advances that could try to fight that. So they're doing all kinds of things with, was it NMN and NAD and all these things that are supposed to help lengthen your telomeres and the things that can help with longevity. There could be some interesting money behind it because of space. But in the end, hopefully it helps all of us.
I think it's interesting. Yeah, I think that's a great point. Why do we not think about this in the Earth perspective? Like bringing it back to home here. Like, a lot of people on Earth that aren't traveling to space. Let's figure out how this stuff helps us here on Earth as well. So I think that you're right. Hopefully those findings come out and we can all anti-age together.
Well, I have a question. Do you think, I think part of this does raise the question, would this, if you had the opportunity to go to space, would this deter you? Would this be something that concerned you more about that decision? Like if this wasn't an issue, would you be like, yes, I have the opportunity, I'm going to go to space, I get to go be in the space station for, a month. Would you do it? Or would this actually deter you from doing that?
It would deter me. I'm not 100%. It depends how long and what we're talking about. And also if there's some like chaotic thing happening here on Earth that makes me have to go somewhere else, then I, maybe want to get on that rocket. But, if it's just for fun, like, and I'm talking about taking years off my life or something, that's not worth it to me. So I think you got to really weigh the pros and cons of the situation, and each one's gonna be a little different. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by space, but I'm not like necessarily thinking it's for me. If you know what I mean. Like, I think I could leave that up for others to do it. Now, that being said, I think, as my dad always says, like anything in moderation. So if it was going up there and flying around for a little bit and coming back down and taking a few hours off my life, sure. But I don't know about long-term effects. I don't know,
setting up shop up there at Mars.
No, not playing. Not in my lifetime, anyway.
Right. All right. So one more thing about space, then we're going to jump into our final article here today and discussion point. Earth is actually suddenly spinning faster. And it's interesting. We don't really get similar to that heartbeat situation. You know, it could impact things on Earth a little bit, but we're talking like not a lot faster, but just a millisecond. Making they recorded the shortest day since the records began recently, and records didn't begin recently, but since records began, and that happened recently, and so. It's interesting. I don't know. I don't really know what it means. I think it could impact things, and I just thought it was interesting to bring up because you don't hear this every day, and it has never happened before. So I thought I'd mention it and see what you all think.
Is it just me, or is anybody else getting like a butterfly effect kind of like a feel from this? You know what I mean by like that? Not necessarily like they're not parallel, but like the slightest little thing throws off the Earth. You know what I mean? Like all of our clocks are now off, which throws off all of our GPS, which throws off all of our computers, which affects transportation, which affects farming, which I don't know. It's freaking me out the more and more I think about it.
Yeah, I mean that's what the big outcome is, right? That they said, because you start to wonder like, okay, what does this really mean? And at the end of the day, does it change anything? They add in these little leap seconds or whatever they need to do to compensate. But when you read about this, what it talks about is, could it render GPS satellites useless? And that's the scary part, right, John? It's everything you just said. Like, what then does that impact that completely ends up changing everything, the way we've designed society these days? Like, what things do GPS satellites control? What other things would that impact? And that's where it starts to get a little scary.
Yeah, definitely. So something to think about. And we'll move on to our next and final conversation point here. We're talking about innovation. Came out of our something out of Purdue University. Boiler up. What if pavement that you drive on could charge your car? That's the article title, but they came out with something that actually is pavement and charges vehicles. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Wanted to give a little shout out to Purdue. We got a couple alumni here on the call or on the podcast, so I want to make sure we do that and take a look at this technology because it's really interesting.
Oh, it's definitely interesting, and there's a lot of technologies that similar to this that you think could be utilized for the greater good of society. I think the real trick obviously is scalability. Like we could probably do this on a racetrack somewhere, but how do you extrapolate that across the globe or the nation to really make a huge impact? But I'm not trying to undermine everything. It's pretty cool, and I'm glad Purdue is making some headway here.
Yeah, I think just the innovation side of like having your car charge itself is cool. I don't know, like I think like why do our wheels not do that? Like there's probably other things that could help charge your car too, but it brings that kind of conversation forward, and I love that they're doing something to try to figure it out. So that's why I wanted to bring it up.
So I will just mention one other university. Sorry, I don't want to burst on the Purdue bubble.
Oh,
I know I've got two alumni here, but Stanford University, they a few years ago, we saw a presentation by a team out of Stanford that designed ubiquitous wireless charging. So what would it look like if those charging pads were throughout the city? Right. So when you're idling in traffic or waiting at stoplights or stop signs, so wherever there's traffic, right, where people tend to sit and wait, what if in those spots you actually had that type of charging that just kind of kept everything, gave you a 10% battery boost or whatever it might be? So I think the takeaway here is that there are a lot of people starting to think about what is the future of electric? What could that look like?
Absolutely. And Stanford, I think it sounds familiar. So yeah,
I don't trust anybody from Stanford.
I've heard of that.
Okay, you Boilermakers.
Just kidding.
Just kidding. That's a great school, and obviously they're doing really great stuff over there too. So, yeah, that's really cool. I think there's probably other technologies like it out there, like you said, and seems like a lot of people are taking a look at it. So, with that, thanks everyone for listening. And definitely appreciate all of your thoughts. If you want to reach out to us, you can at somewhatfrank@est.us, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to another Somewhat Frank podcast episode. Be sure to rate and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to celebrate your wins, small and large, with gratitude. It will make your journey more enjoyable. We'll be back soon with another episode.